I had always considered myself a patient man. I wasn't the type to react rashly or act on impulse. I believed in giving things time, letting moments pass, and letting feelings settle before making decisions. That's how I managed to stay in a marriage that wasn't always easy, or always perfect. But the moment I discovered the truth, I knew there was no more time left. I had married Rachel 3.5 years ago. She was everything I could have asked for. Smart, beautiful, funny, caring, a woman who seemed to have it all together. We had met in college, both of us navigating the waters of adulthood, figuring out who we were and what we wanted in life. Rachel was independent, driven, and had dreams that stretched far beyond what I could fathom. But she had a warmth that drew people in, and I couldn't help but fall for her. Our relationship started off like a whirlwind. We spent hours talking, laughing, and sharing things that felt deeper than anything I had ever shared with anyone before. We were young, but there was a sense of permanence in our connection. By the time we graduated, it felt like we had built a life together. We moved in together shortly after college, and within a year, we were married, but marriage isn't always as romantic as it seems in the movies. We learned that early on. There were disagreements, challenges, and moments of doubt. But through it all, we worked through things. At least, I thought we did. I assumed that if we communicated and were patient with each other, we could navigate the ups and downs like every other couple. Little did I know, there was something lurking beneath the surface that I had no idea about. It started small. Just a few changes in Rachel's behavior that I didn't think much of at first. She became busier with work, spending late nights at the office or going out with her friends more frequently. At first, I thought nothing of it. She was ambitious. She had always been. Maybe she was just focused on her career, or maybe she needed some space to unwind. I respected that, but over time, the little things started adding up. She seemed more distant, more distracted. Our once long, late-night conversations turned into short exchanges. The affectionate touch I once felt was now replaced with coldness. The intimacy that had been a cornerstone of our marriage became rare and mechanical. Still, I told myself it was just a phase. We had been married for a while. Maybe this was just a normal part of relationships. I reasoned. I didn't want to jump to conclusions, to accuse her of something without evidence. So I stayed patient, I stayed hopeful, but there were moments when my instincts told me otherwise. I'd come home late from work and find her phone screen turned down, a habit she didn't have before. She'd spend hours in the shower when she was already running late. And then there was the fact that, whenever I asked about her day, her responses became vague, almost evasive. I ignored the signs. I didn't want to admit what I was starting to suspect. I told myself that I was just being paranoid, overthinking things. But then, one day, it all came crashing down. It was a Sunday afternoon. Rachel had said she was meeting some friends for brunch, and I had planned to spend the day cleaning up around the house and catching up on work. As I was tidying up the living room, I noticed her phone, lying on the coffee table. Her notifications were visible messages from someone named James. I didn't recognize the name, and at first, I thought nothing of it. Maybe it was a colleague, maybe a friend from one of her activities. But then I saw the messages. The first one was innocuous enough: "Can't wait to see you tonight. I'll be counting the minutes." I felt a pang in my chest, but I pushed it away. It wasn't definitive. It wasn't anything that could confirm my suspicions. Then I saw the next message: "Last night was amazing. I can't get enough of you." My heart stopped. The messages continued, each one more intimate than the last. The tone, the words, they were unmistakable. There was no denying it. Rachel had been having an affair. I couldn't breathe. My world seemed to crumble around me, the ground beneath my feet disappearing. I stood there, frozen, staring at the screen, my mind racing. I didn't know how to process what I was seeing. I had never imagined Rachel would do something like this. Not her. Not the woman I had married, the one I had trusted with everything. I wanted to confront her. I wanted to scream, to demand answers. But something stopped me. I didn't know if it was the shock or the overwhelming sense of betrayal, but all I could do was stare at her phone. I thought about calling her, asking her outright, but the words didn't come. Instead, I quietly put the phone down and walked out of the room. I needed space. I needed time to think. The next few hours passed in a blur. I thought about everything about our past, our marriage, the dreams we had shared. And I realized that in those 3.5 years, I had never seen the signs. I had never thought to question the love I thought we had. The truth was, she had been hiding this from me for months, maybe even longer, and I had been blind to it. When Rachel came home that evening, she seemed surprised to see me sitting in the living room, my face pale and hollow. She tried to kiss me, but I pulled away. She frowned, sensing something was wrong, but I couldn't look at her. My anger and heartbreak were bubbling just beneath the surface, but I didn't know how to express it. Is something wrong? She asked, her voice laced with concern, though I could hear the subtle edge of defensiveness in it. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. I didn't want to lose control. But I needed to know the truth. Who is James? I asked quietly, my voice barely above a whisper. She froze. For a moment, there was complete silence, and I could see the flicker of panic in her eyes. She opened her mouth to say something, but the words didn't come. I knew then that I had my answer. I don't know what you're talking about, she stammered, but the lie was so transparent, it felt like a slap in the face. I shook my head, feeling tears welling up in my eyes, though I refused to let them fall. I wasn't going to give her that power. Don't lie to me, Rachel. I know about the messages. I know about the affair. She started to cry then, and I almost couldn't bear it. Her tears felt like salt in an open wound. I had trusted her, loved her, and she had betrayed me in the worst possible way. I'm so sorry, she whispered between sobs. I didn't mean for it to happen. It just happened. I couldn't listen to it. The excuses. The apologies. The justifications. It was too much. I had never felt more alone in my life. The woman I had built my world around was standing in front of me, crying, and all I could feel was a deep, hollow ache. I stood up and walked toward the door. I need to get away. I can't do this anymore. Wait. Please. She called, but I didn't turn back. I couldn't. The weight of everything, of her betrayal, of the trust that had been shattered, of the future we had planned, was too much to carry in that moment. I left. I didn't know where I was going, but I couldn't stay there. Not in that house, not with her. I checked into a hotel that night, and for the first time in years, I allowed myself to cry. I let the tears fall, each one carrying away a little bit of the man I had been. The next few days were a blur. Rachel called me, texted me, and begged me to come home. She promised she would end things with James, that she was sorry, that it would never happen again. But I couldn't believe her. I didn't know who she was anymore, and I couldn't bear the thought of staying in a marriage built on lies. I knew what I had to do. I quietly filed for divorce. I didn't want to drag things out, to let this drag on for months while I lived in limbo. It hurt, but I knew it was the right choice. I couldn't rebuild what had been broken. In the end, I quietly left. I didn't give her any grand speeches or tearful confrontations. I simply walked away, and in doing so, I started to rebuild myself. The pain didn't disappear overnight, but with time, I began to heal. I learned that sometimes, the best thing you can do when faced with betrayal is to leave quietly, to reclaim your dignity and your peace. 3.5 years was all it took for a dream to shatter. But I learned that sometimes, endings are just new beginnings in disguise. And in the silence of my departure, I found a new version of myself, one that no longer relied on someone else for validation or happiness. I was enough, even if she wasn't.